Hello, 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 my friends. Welcome back to the Dynamo. So I want to do something different today. I want to do something a little kind of discussion-y based. We can tentatively call these Dynamo discussions just for the fun of it, but I want to discuss kind of like features. I'm a bit late to the party because the beta is already out, and we've already kind of like across the content creator community, a lot of different creators have already kind of gotten their ideas onto video or onto paper on their blogs about the kind of features they want to see happening in the game. But I was listening to a podcast on the way home, and it got me thinking about a specific aspect of this game that I think is completely missing when you factor in real life football, and that has to come to the management of under 21s team, under 19 sometimes, and B teams. Now, this is a maligned feature. Like, the community sometimes is split kind of into three camps. The one that I'm personally in, which is the abstract indifference and just uncaring. If it was announced tomorrow, I don't think I would be jumping for joy. But if it was announced that it was never coming, I don't think I would. I don't think it would change how I play the game that much. But I can't deny there's been instances where the existence of what limited ability you have in reserve sides, because they exist in internationals. You can manage under 19s and you can manage under 21 international sides, and that'll factor into a story that I want to tell in a while for where this did affect me in a playthrough. Because I think being given the opportunity to manage under 21s and B teams can actually form a key and integral part of a journeyman save, of starting unemployed with absolutely nothing and working your way through individual leagues to build reputation. Because that is a key part that I think is often missing in this conversation. Because somebody might say, but why would you ever want to manage a B team? And my answer would be, because the finances in a Barcelona can afford to pay my coaching license if I can take the B team job, because the B team job has a reputation that is attainable for me. There you go. Because another thing that can also factor into is that your manager has lots of different attributes. That is kind of a key aspect towards how you shape the game as a manager. I don't think they really matter that much. I think SI needs to kind of introduce how the manager profile influences the squad that you're working with. And I think one of the things that could be interesting is there's an attribute called working with youngsters, which I've never really bought that a first team manager can be good with working with youngsters in the way Football Manager presents the game, because you're working with youngsters is appointing your youth academy. It's appointing your youth coaches and hiring a head of youth development. So being good with youngsters in this game translate to you managing adults to train your youngsters. That's not been good with youth, in my opinion. I think kind of like young youth development, that attribute, that should be trained by managing youth teams. So if you want to be a manager that specializes in youth development, I think you need to have put time into into coaching youth football. So you need to assign yourself as a youth football manager, because this is another aspect that I think this is important, because the way a key part of football management is, like, as a manager within the personalities of story, the drama of how football portrays itself as a sport into our consciousness is in the personalities of the men and women at the helm. And like, what forges those personalities, that is a huge aspect of all of this. Because if I was to think of Pep Guardiola, like Joseph Guardiola, one of the first things that comes into my mind is what made him the coach he is today. And a huge part of it has to be put down that he was assistant manager to Frank Rijkaard. That has to include there. He also worked under Louis van Gaal. So those two managers shaped a key aspect of how Pep views the game, and he's often talked about this, where that he had a very intricate. He was a player under Van Gaal. Look, it doesn't matter. Don't get distracted by my distractions. He's often talked about how the people he worked under shaped the kind of manager he became, because the manager he is today is influenced by the way he views the game, and the way he views the game was deeply influenced by the men he's worked under. And I think that can be interesting, where if you want to develop kind of like tactical coaching, and one thing that I think should be interesting is tactical styles, I think, should be tied to your attributes. Where if you want to play a low block, but you're really bad at defense, like if you have really bad defensive attributes, you should not be able to translate that into an actual team talk to your team, because you don't understand the logistics of the tactic you are trying to demonstrate. So part of the formulation of being able to manage those tactics should be in having to find managers that you can work under who will appoint you into coaching roles. That if you want to be a defensive coach, you will find a manager somewhere, go into their youth team, and they will assign you into being a defense coach. That'll improve your defense attribute, and as a result, you will be more effective in defensive tactics. I think that could be a very interesting way of doing this. And part of where this all comes from me is because I spend an awful lot of time in the editor. That's basically my bread and butter. I almost put as much time into the editor as I put into the actual game itself. And one of the things that's never escaped my notice is that every club in the game has a reputation. And that reputation is critically important to how the world of Football Manager simulates itself and simulates interactions between clubs. Like, reputation impacts your sponsorship, the value of contracts, the value of players. It often impacts television deals and how you're able to attract crowds. It'll influence the kind of managers that'll be able to apply. And like, that matters for you too as well. You have a reputation score between 0 and 200. And clubs and international teams have a reputation between 0 and 10,000. So matching those up together is really important, where if you want to manage a Premier League club, you need to have the relevant reputation to be able to even apply for the job. Now, in real life, you need Continental Pro licenses to be able to manage top division teams. I don't actually know if they've put that into Football Manager, because that could be a fun way of doing it, where if you ever want to manage in continental competitions, you need a continental license. You need the UEFA Continental Pro license. So there could be incentive towards, if you don't start with the continental license, you have to get yourself in a financial position to either earn enough to take the tests, or get yourself in a position to be a B team coach for a club that can afford to give you a continental license. And then what could be really fun in there is that if you're doing a really good job, and here is where you can interact with pre-existing features. Every club has a tactical style. Clubs have specific kind of cultures and hierarchies. So if you can find a club that matches the kind of hierarchy that you want to do, and then you put yourself into those attributes, like when you take over team talks for, I'll just pause my my timer. If you not team talks, when you're taking over tactics, one thing they could do is that you could have highlighted attributes that the manager wants you to play pass into space. It's up to you to click it. But if you click it, then that's kind of noted within the board where you're adopting the philosophy of the club itself, and that'll in turn affect your manager stats. And how that can work then is that if you end up in a situation where you have a track record of 2 or 3 years, we'll take Barcelona here. If you have a track record of 2 or 3 years playing the Barcelona culture style, getting results with like Barcelona players, playing well in the Barcelona manager's coaching setup where you're managing your aspect, you'll get invited for an interview. Because you clearly understand the tactical setup of the squad, you understand how to achieve and execute that tactical goal, and you've been training with the coaching staff. So there's a way of integrating B team and under 21 management into developing a manager profile and actually putting forward being able to get into those top jobs to get a reputation boost. That could be a really interesting way of developing another way of playing this game, because to me, I think there's 2 ways of playing Football Manager. There is the one club for life, where you take a club and you spend the every waking moment of your manager's existence. Your manager was born to manage that club. Literally, you were 3 days old and you were 3 days in the job. Or you start unemployed, or you start with a low club and you work your way, jumping from club to club, getting yourself in a position to be able to try generate some sort of reputation within the game so that you can basically do a journeyman to get lots of jobs. Everything I'm talking about makes that second part so much more enjoyable. And I want to tell you, and I want to finish off on a story of where the absence of something like this and the way the game handles youth teams really breaks the immersion of the game. And I want to to take you back to, like, I used to do a lot of blogging on Football Manager based UK. There we go. I did a journeyman save where I went from Auxerre, and I spent 2 years in Auxerre in the French second division, and I couldn't get them promoted. It just didn't work for me. I had some decent players, I had some decent tactics, had some decent success, but I think I got into the playoffs in the second season and lost the playoffs. And I was just, no, I can't do this. I have to walk away from Auxerre. And I wanted something low stress, low pressure. So I noticed that the Scotland under-21 job is available. And I thought to myself, oh, this is fun. This is interesting. International management. I'm not under a huge amount of pressure here. I'm just about kind of like developing those players and getting them senior ready. So I took the job, and I spent 3 years being Scotland under-21 manager. And part of the highlight, the part that I really, really enjoyed about that time as Scotland manager, was because I brought them to the Euros through the qualifying and got into a group, and that group had Poland and Spain. For the life of me, I don't remember who the fourth team was, but I remember in the last match day, to get out of the group, I had to beat Spain, and I pulled it off. I beat them like 2-1. And I absolutely, like, there was scenes. It was like, I've never enjoyed international management as much as I did with Scotland under 21s. And then I got into the next round of qualifying, and I lost to like Germany or England, one of the two. But it was like, it was an incredible achievement. Like, we weren't even expected to go to the competition, and I was like, oh, I'm delighted with this one. And then I noticed that the Verona job in Italy came up, and I was kind of like, you know what, I've been in international management for 3 years. I feel like I've developed as a coach. I feel like I understand the match engine a little bit more. So I'm going to go and apply for the Verona job. And I done my interview. They never brought up Scotland. They brought up Auxerre about how I spent time in the second division. They never brought up Scotland. And I was kind of like, okay, fair enough. And then I got offered the job, and I was like, yeah, go on. I took the job. And one of the first questions that the interviewer, or that the journalist, asked me was, you've been out of the game for 3 years. It's been 3 years since your last job. And it was almost like the world completely ignored that I had brought a football team to a major championship, got out of the group stages, and beat a team I shouldn't have beat. It destroyed my immersion in that moment, and that save, I kept playing. It was fun, but I remember feeling kicked while I was down, because the game seemed to not give a shit about its own play system. It seemed to not care that this was even available. Now, this is a problem with international management and being able to take youth teams, but I love the idea of, like, being able to take a low pressure job and using it to build a manager's profile, and so, like, making that matter, I think, should matter to Sports Interactive. It should matter that any job you do, like, that should be represented in your manager's profile. The kind of tactical setups that you're able to be, kind of even just give it, like, you get a buff in certain tactics because you have a certain setup. Like if you have, like, if your coaching attributes are like really low technical, really low fitness, and really low attacking, and you're playing a gegenpress, that does not make sense to me, because your manager profile does not understand how that works. Like, the manager you've created does not understand how a gegenpress works. So why are your players ripping up the league with it? Doesn't make sense to me. It's almost like the manager doesn't matter in that instance, which I think defeats the whole point of the game and why we play it, because we want to be why it matters. We want to be why you won things. So I think introducing the ability to manage in under 21s and B teams, that could really bring the game forward. And I think that could be a lot of fun, especially in an FM cycle where we do feel starved for reinvention of the game itself and it feeling a little stale. Friends, we're going to call these Dynamo discussions. Go on for the laugh. I might do another one next week, or just as I feel like doing them. I need to come back to you with episode 4 of the Bayless save for Man City. We'll see how that goes. Other than that, I'll catch you in the next ones. Cheers.